to another episode of The Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi 1550 AM. This is your show host, RJ Sonia, founder and CEO of Orbis 86. And joining me in the studio today, we have Kamal Ahluwalia, who is the president at Ikigai Labs. Without further ado, I would love to go to Kamal and ask him to introduce himself to the audiences listening in to The Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi. Welcome to Radio Zindagi, Kamal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for actually inviting after we met a couple of weeks ago at that Saturday event around generative AI.
Yes, and it was an amazing event. All the speakers were great, but just the crowd, right? People have so much interest in AI, and it feels like artificial intelligence. Obviously, the term itself or the computation, it all started a while ago. We have looked at Turing machines as the machines that started bringing AI to the forefront. But that being said, right now, I feel like there's a lot of mixed feelings. People are excited about it, but at the same time, they're also intimidated by AI. Tell me, what do you do in this world of AI?
So at Ikigai, we have a platform for building AI apps for enterprises. And so the focus right now is to actually get a large ecosystem going. Plus, what you said is one of the keys that there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of lack of knowledge. And because one of our co-founders is a professor at MIT, so we've actually invested a lot in building classes so that first of all people understand what it is and how to use it, and then we start solving the business problems, but get the fear out of the way because this wave is here to stay.
This wave is here to stay, and whether we like it or not, it's already here, right? And it is advancing by leaps and bounds. And for the benefit of our audiences today, we are also going to talk about how do we keep things in check.
Sure.
So at Ikigai, I'm curious about the educational content that is being created. Is it content that is easily accessible by the average Joe and Jane?
100%. Just go to academy at ikigailabs.io and you can see our classes there. And I think while we have started this thing just over the last year, 9 months actually, over 6,000 people have engaged with the company.
Wow.
And part of it is teaching concepts. And along with that, you get to use the Ikigai platform and the builder, etc. The idea is to familiarize people with both get comfortable with data sets, how to piece it together, how to apply algorithms. We take care of all the details, so it's easy. In fact, the tagline is easy, fast, and powerful. And the opportunity here is off the charts.
The opportunity is massive, especially we have a lot of parents of Gen Zers or Gen Alphas tuning in, right? And also we have Gen Zers and Gen Alphas tuning in themselves. And there's a lot of curiosity in the younger generation. Obviously, we are millennials, right? We have seen a lot of things change. But I feel like Gen Zs, Gen Alphas, they grew up with technology. So they are not that much intimidated by it, but they are very curious and their curiosity is off the charts. And they're aren't a lot of forums where you can go and learn about it and also figure out how to use things. So at Ikigai Academy, if people go to academy.ikigai.io, right, if they go there, do they have to pay for the courses today or is it completely free for anyone to come and join and learn?
For individuals, it's free. In fact, next week in Boston, some of our engineers are teaching high schoolers.
Nice.
So it's literally up and down the chain, as you're saying. Everybody's curious, everybody's interested. So why not inform the world?
Absolutely, and I feel like that's a great point. Like, why not inform the world? Why not educate them? So we also educate them in a way to build ethical AI systems,
Yep.
right? I think that education is extremely important, not just to help people understand what AI is, how to build an AI, but also help inculcate principles around ethical usage of AI. So I'm really happy that there's been so much work being done at Ikigai. And guys, like Kamal said, if you missed it, the founder of Ikigai is from MIT, and I believe there are other MIT
Oh yeah.
MIT folks on the board, on in the company. And because I remember you were talking to me the other day, and you were like, "Oh, I'm surrounded by all of these MIT experts,
Smart people,
right?" So a lot of this content and programming that's coming from you, it's technically coming straight from MIT, but without paying any costs for accessing MIT grade education. Now, with that being said, Kamal, just before we talk more about Ikigai, I would love to know about your journey, your foray into the world of artificial intelligence. Before Ikigai, what were you doing? And personally, when it comes to artificial intelligence, what excites you the most?
Great. So I'll keep my background to a minimum, but I'm computer science major by training. I was building mostly computer networking solutions. I did have a short stint at Apple.
Okay.
That was before Steve Jobs came back. I worked on the Newton product, which was like the predecessor to iPhone. So did all that, got the entrepreneurial bug, joined a startup. We actually ended up having our messaging, wireless messaging service in 5 continents.
Oh, wow.
So I went from being an engineer to being on the road as we were launching some of these services. And that time GSM was young.
Right.
So I'm dating myself. But around that time, really got to enjoy. And that was sort of my slow transition from engineering to product management and then business development. And then I had my own company and we did a lot of strategy work and implementations, etc. We were acquired by a company called Selectica.
Oh, nice.
And that team led by Raj Jaswa and Sanjay Mittal, we had a very successful IPO. So around that time, I sort of switched completely to go-to-market side, and since then, I've continued in that vein. And this is will be my third young company, which hopefully will be the third unicorn and probably the biggest one. So, and to your other question about AI, I think that has genuine roots. So at Aptus, we had actually engaged Goldman to take us public.
Okay.
And when we were working on our S1, because at that time we were doing some rudimentary work in conversational AI.
Got it.
So I asked the lead banker who was working with us on the S1 that how much should we write about our foray into AI? And he said that, look, think about your journey as a two act story. First act is what got you to the IPO. So people are interested in that, but they're more interested in the act two, that what will you do from here onwards? So if AI is a big part of the story, then absolutely write about it. So then I asked him, I said, so what's the thinking in Wall Street about AI? And this would be 2017.
Right.
So he said, look, the thesis is that this will be more disruptive and longer lasting than any of the prior technology waves.
Right. I think one of the biggest disruptors of the 20th century has to be internet. And I feel like AI has that same potential.
Yep.
And it will not just touch our lives in the way we communicate, because even with internet, it has become an everyday part of our life.
Yep.
And it has touched so many aspects. The internet is no longer just us logging onto Google or logging into the internet to check our emails once in a month or once in a week, right? It has become such an integral part of our lives, because even if we don't realize, a lot of our devices at home, for
Yep.
example, right, the IoT at enterprises, everything's connected. Education has changed, exchange of information has changed, and I feel like obviously, AI has that same potential. Now, you spoke about conversational AI. Conversational AI was more predictive AI, and now we are looking into at this journey of transformers in the world of AI. What are your thoughts?
I love it. Absolutely love
I
it.
can see the big smile on your face, right? You're like, yes, yeah, that's the journey I want to talk about.
Absolutely. Actually, even 5 years ago, I joined Eightfold. The two co-founders were from Google and YouTube, etc. So we were using same technology, but clearly not as sophisticated as what we have now 5 years later. But the thing was, we had an AI platform for HR,
Mm-hmm.
and you could just see when we were talking about our company that people's eyes was glazed over. They didn't understand the concepts. They didn't want to understand the concepts. It was hard. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, it was just hard work. And then 3 years ago, it started to change.
Yes, actually, a lot of people know about GPT because of Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Chat GPT is a recent addition to the GPT stack, but GPT 3, when it came out,
Yep.
since then it has been transforming at least content writing, for example,
Totally.
right? I have been using GPT 3 for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And at that time, you had to sign up to get access to the beta for OpenAI,
Yeah.
because unlike ChatGPT, it wasn't publicly available to everyone. And it was very exciting waiting for your name to be picked up on that wait list of applications. And then even off at that time, they provided API access. However, what I feel with Chat GPT, they have done a great job mixing NLP, natural language processing, with amazing prompt engineering. I mean, obviously, coming from GPT itself, the prompt engineering is spectacular. Changing your natural language inputs to those prompts are great. Because we have actually sat down and written the prompts, and the results would not be as close as a natural conversation with Chat GPT. So, just that NLP processing has also it's been mind blowing for me. That with that being said, I have a question for you. Right, you said that Ikigai would be the next unicorn. If I'm not wrong, and this is public information, Ikigai also raised an amazing series just recently, right?
Seed. They've only had seed round. We'll close our Series A soon.
Oh, so we have had a seed round, yes,
Yeah.
and we are Ikigai is actually raising Series A now.
Yeah.
So how big was the seed round?
I think 12, 13 million.
12 to 13 million guys for a seed round. I mean, that itself puts it in a spectacular valuation. Generally, when you have had a seed round of 12 to 13 million dollars, your Series A, I know the market is not as great as it used to be, but before COVID or even during COVID, actually, a 10 million Series A would mean you're at least going to get 100 million plus. A 10 million seed meant 100 million plus Series A. But now in this market, it's still going to be at least in tens of millions and making this company an instant unicorn at the very least. That's how I'm looking at it.
Not in a month, but yes, give us a couple of years, we'll get there.
Yes, absolutely. And with the potential of AI and this amazing team that's there, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years we're actually looking at a decacorn and not just a
Yes,
unicorn.
absolutely.
For the benefit of our audience, by the way, in the startup world, right, a unicorn refers to a company that has been valued at $1 billion. Now we are talking about the trends of decacorns. Decacorns are company that are valued at $10 billion plus. And we are seeing that companies with amazing teams, with amazing thesis, are hitting that mark very
Yep.
easily. All right, so let's chat. Let's continue our conversations. I know the other day when we were chatting with each other, we were talking about how do we not necessarily tie down or obstruct this phenomenal growth, but how do we put guardrails around it so that the growth of AI is in check, especially when it comes to the potential of AI as a tool harming humanity. Now, the reason why I specifically say it's a tool because it's just like any tools that we have used. So, a knife in the hand of a chef will get you a beautiful gourmet meal, but in the hand of a murderer, right? You have to be very careful. It's the same with nuclear fission. That power was discovered and scientists worked on it so that we could get an unlimited source of clean energy. But the world was introduced to nuclear fission when Hiroshima and Nagasaki experienced the atomic bomb drops. And we know the effects of that are still lasting. Similarly, with AI is a tool, right? Unfortunately, we are the ones who are at point to wield the prowess of that tool. In your opinion, what guardrails can we put around this unprecedented growth of AI that will still allow us to grow, but at the same time also try and ensure that AI as a tool benefits the advancement of humanity versus it becoming a threat to humanity?
Great question. So, first part is, and you actually, I'm glad that you pointed out some of the major technological innovations, right? Whether it was fission, whether it was internet, all that stuff. Mostly they have resulted in good stuff, but there's always an element of things either gone sideways or the power being abused. It'll be the same thing with AI. I think the quickest way to do it, because what I'm seeing is the number of use cases are growing exponentially.
Yes,
People's creativity is taking over, and that's the part that you won't be able to control
that
on
is
what can
right.
be done.
What can be done?
And I think the main thing that I think personally should be done is what we did 20 years ago around for Sarbanes Oxley, because around that time the financial disclosures were all over the place.
Now, our audiences might not know what Starbucks Oxley is, right? And obviously, if we have any Gen Zers, Gen Alphas, they were probably young kids. At that time, in fact, I was in school myself. So I would love for you to just get into the details a little bit. I know everybody knows about the financial markets crashing, the dot-com bubble
Right.
burst, as we know, but it would be great if you can talk a little bit about what happened and then what changed with Starbucks-Oxley.
Yeah. So main thing was that especially when you become public and investors are putting in money, your financial disclosures are very important
That's right.
because you're supposed to give the fair information and same information to everyone so that it's a fair market out there. And what was happening with a lot of companies was they were being very lax and sort of reckless with how they were running their businesses and what they were reporting, resulting in a lot of people putting in money without having adequate information. So the main thing that changed was with Sarbanes-Oxley was the CEO and CFO will sign all financial disclosures.
So this was a constitutional ruling, a bipartisan ruling
Yeah.
that came out.
And the whole issue was you two are responsible for running your business. So you need to sign and be accountable for it, held responsible for what you're doing with your company. And that suddenly, once it went into effect, very quickly, this what I would call white collar crime slash mistakes went down substantially because everybody's smart. They know what's happening. They may not want to disclose it. We need to do the same thing with AI.
Accountability is important, folks, right? Like with all of this unprecedented growth and check, if something goes waywards, are you going to are you going to blame an AI algorithm, right? And if you blame an AI algorithm, great, but that will not stop the perpetrators from repeating the same things again.
Yep.
A lot of us, obviously, we know about the dot-com bubble burst, and we know that sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, financial statements are fudged just to make things look better than they are. In fact, a lot of us, especially in the Indian community, we might remember the rise and fall of Satyam as well, right? And it's unfortunate to see that at times people have to, or people for whatever reason, they resort to such measures where you do not give out the right information. But
Yep.
with Starbucks-Oxley, what it did was it made two people, right, the CEO and the CFO, responsible for giving out accurate financial information. So they could not go around and say, I am sorry, but my CA messed up.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry, somebody else messed up.
I didn't know
And
this was going on in my company.
yes, I did not even know it's just some rebellious gang, taking over. I didn't know about it. So people could not make those statements. And if they messed up, they were the ones who were going to be held accountable and they were the ones who would be sent to jail. And we have actually seen that being enacted too. Like one of the most recent cases would probably be the unfortunate fall of Elizabeth, as we know, right? And we know about the whole blood testing thing that was going on. And it's very surprising for people to actually see being held responsible in such a rigorous fashion. But that was like a multi-million-dollar fraud again that we saw. So again, now coming back to the same subject, right? Like you feel people need to be made more responsible. Do you have any thoughts, ideas, opinions on how we could advance this accountability? Now, folks, one of the things you need to realize is that our government, our US government, the regulators are working on it. Unfortunately, regulations are always a little slow to catch up, but a lot of companies are contributing to regulations, and we are in an era where at least the brightest minds who are really focused on the development of humanity are coming together and saying that, hey, we also need to self regulate, right? It is one thing for the regulators to tell us that do XYZ, but until that comes in, let us all self regulate. So, the question that I'm asking Kamal here, it's purely, asking for your opinion because I know we don't have any hard set of laws that we can look at right now. But just in your opinion, right, when we talk about ethical advancement of AI, how to keep AI's growth in check, how do you think we could better self regulate or be more accountable to ensure that we are using this tool for the benefit of everyone involved?
So there are a couple of things. One is, of course, the accountability, so that the people at the top are owning up to, okay, this is what my, because it's their resources, their money, their capital that's being used to develop something with AI. That's number one. The double click there is most of the time because AI needs data. So what data is the company collecting? How it is being used? And how is that connected to their business model? Because this thread is what has created most of the problems over the last 10 years.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up because I'm pretty sure as our listeners are listening to all of this, they are thinking about Mark Zuckerberg probably, right? Like with Facebook, we have seen enormous amount of data being collected. And we have also seen that in cases like the Cambridge Analytics case, right? That data being used to actually manipulate the general masses. And Facebook has been one of the giants leveraging AI for over a decade now. So, so data, right? So people at the top need to be held accountable. We also have to keep check of the data that we consume and how we consume it. Can you explain that a little more? That in your mind, what does that mean?
So there is this concept of anonymized aggregated learning.
Right. And
Google,
break it down for people. They understand
yeah.
anonymized, they understand aggregators. What does that mean?
So consumer applications, most of them do so well because you're learning from every interaction from people, in some cases all over the world. So that's a very fast way to actually train your models and become very accurate in predicting what's likely to happen next. And Chat GPT, or more importantly, GPT-3 and GPT-4, these are pre-trained models on internet scale data,
Yes.
right? So that's the whole idea. Now, it's one thing to train the model. Now, if you start collecting all that data for some purpose and then using it for other purpose, that's what gets companies into trouble, right? And we've seen that with a lot of these consumer companies, and that's where all the issues are coming up, whether it's in EU or the US side and other countries also.
We know about laws like GDPR.
Yeah,
Even in California, we have state laws
yeah,
on how consumer data can be collected. Consent is
yeah,
important. Being able to withdraw consent is also
yep,
important. And those things become even more important with the advancement of AI.
exactly. And the reason I'm bringing this up with CEO and CFO is if anybody is playing in the AI field now, they know what they're doing.
Yes.
And if this is the accountability part, they will make sure that it's done right. That whatever they are signing up for is exactly how things are done. And by the way, this is how the laws and the policies will get informed much faster.
Right.
Because that's my worry that right now, if we try to cover all this, the laws will become very general, which basically means there's nothing but loopholes all over the place.
Yes.
And then all the companies need to do is skirt the loopholes and they're fine.
And that's what they pay a lot of their legal teams for,
Absolutely.
right? To be aware of the loopholes. And like you said, if it's so easy to just point fingers at 100 people in the company and then you cannot even prosecute a single person
Yep.
because the blame is completely spread out. Let's talk about anonymized aggregated learning though, right? Like what does anonymity do here? I have a background in healthcare, and there, because of PHI, which stands for personal health information, the laws around anonymized data being collected and used, they are very specific, right? So you can use your consumers data, but it has to be de-identified so the data is not falling even into the hands of the developers. Production data is handled with great care and scrutiny. So for anonymized aggregated learning, what are your thoughts? Like, how would anonymity help us in creating more efficient systems that are able to look at probably a variety of demographics, because no two people are the same, but at the same time, not really start targeting individuals because they know who this person is that the data is coming from.
Yeah, no two people are the same, but at the same time, today the technology is such that if you just do a Google search for your own name,
Everything is going to be there, right?
right? So that's the whole challenge.
Even all the bad things you want to forget, it's going to be there on page one. And in fact, bad things, people enjoy drama more. So you'll find, if you ever indulged in any public level shit, that's going to actually show up on page one of Google.
Yep. And so the issue is you need to couple this with common sense.
Right.
So you're on a radio show right now. Give me your checking account number and the bank account.
Yeah, no, thank you.
See, that's having common sense. Now, it doesn't matter what I can or cannot do. Maybe I won't do anything with it. But you know that that's information you shouldn't be sharing with me.
Absolutely. In fact, our Indian community, especially, would be very well aware of a recent scandal and scam that a lot of people, unfortunately, I feel like there might be people listening into the show as well who might have fallen victim to the IRS
Yeah,
scam,
yeah,
right? Where somebody would call you,
yep,
tell you that you have messed it up, and you have to immediately send money via Western Union,
yep,
cash were via Western Union, or else you were going to jail. And there were so many people, especially in the Indian community, you can understand. Like, even I'm still on a visa here, right? It's been 10 years, but obviously the green card still remains elusive for Indians. That's a complete different show topic. But that being said, the point is that a lot of Indians, right, a lot of migrants into United States, they are fearful. They are law abiding. And when something like this happens, everyone is rattled. But what was surprising was these people were able to get money from even well informed US citizens. And I was surprised because just some basic knowledge, like the IRS is never going to call you. In US, whenever you're looking at anything legal or tax related, it has to be in writing. No one can call you and do it. But even people who were living in the United States for decades, born here, they did not know about these things. And with AI, it could become that much more difficult.
yep.
I'm very glad that you are actually bringing this topic up because one of the producers at the radio station, Seba, when we started the show, this was exactly what she wanted to also chat about. She said, how do I get my parents, right, to be aware of all of these frauds and scams that could become that would be perpetrated tenfold by the use of AI. Recently, we saw the use of voice technology, deepfake,
Yes.
where a grandparent was called
Yeah.
and they used the voice of his grandson or granddaughter. I forget the specifics now, but they called in that voice. It was a deep fake, and they asked for money to be sent because apparently they were trying to project that this girl or this kid was hit in an accident and was trying to get funds to get admitted to a hospital. I don't remember whether the guy sent that money or not, or whether it was caught in time. But we will absolutely see the rise of such crimes with things like deepfake. So common sense, right? I would love for you to talk to the general audience and tell them, in terms of common sense, knowing, especially because you are in a position where you have this beautiful bird's eye view of progress in AI across the industry, the average Jane Doe and John Doe, what could these guys do to be on the cautious edge of being consumers of AI, but not becoming victims of AI?
Absolutely. And by the way, this thing will be a moving target,
Yes,
right? We only know so much. And over a period of time, we'll see more and more of these emerge, and then we'll know what to do with it. But the other part is you have to be consciously aware and educate yourself. And with each of these, there's always a way to actually catch it. Like all of us are now used to that if we don't recognize a number, don't pick it up, right? We ignore all these calls. So each of these use cases where fraud is being committed, we will know how to actually mitigate that. And clearly, don't send money. I also got that call at home, and my dad called me. I was actually on a business trip, and I said the same thing. I said, "Don't worry. It is intimidating and scary, but don't worry about it." The second part is never click on stuff that you're not aware of, either on your phone or other stuff. And each of these, as they happen, your banks, etc., will inform you because they are also tracking these things
yeah,
as well as anybody else. And also, the third piece is if you don't know, if you don't understand the content, when in doubt, let it go.
that's a good one to hold by,
Yeah.
right? When in doubt, let it go. Yes, I know there are people who are adventurous, they might want to explore it further, then
Curiosity killed
do
the
it.
cat.
Yeah, do it at your own risk.
Yeah.
Again, that all comes down to common sense. If you know what you're doing, maybe you're better suited to take that risk.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you're in doubt, right, and if you think, well, there are people in the world who are like, I have nothing to lose, I'm going to try everything that's there to try. If that is you, that's great. But that's like not even 1% of the world's population, right? Most of the other people, they care about, they are standing in the society, they care about their family, and things like this could unfortunately be very, very harmful, right? Not just to one individual, but to people around them. So when in doubt, let it go,
Yeah.
especially with AI. The second thing that you said, oh my God, since the augment of the internet and the email, phishing scams,
Yep.
they are just never dying, right? It's like the COVID virus. Now, coronavirus with all of its in mutations, with all the mutations that we have seen, finally the WHO, when they removed it from that pandemic alert, they were like, well, guys, it's here to stay, live with it, right? Now we will probably see all of us taking COVID shots along with flu shots every year. So that's the thing with the phishing scams too. I feel like phishing scams have just become that sort of a virus in the internet industry, right? Where they are still here to stay. And even in the world of Web3, so we do a lot of work at the intersection of Web3 and AI, and people have had their decentralized wallets just completely drained out
Yep.
because they clicked on the wrong links.
Yep.
And not one person, right? And it's not just one person who has fallen victim to it. Seeing so many people who also thought they were smart and they wouldn't be victims of such scams, they have fallen scams to it. They have fallen victims to these scams. So like, especially with everything looking so real, right? Like a lot of the phishing scams are because you get an email that looks like it comes from your bank, and people click on it, they enter their login ID and password, and the next thing they know, the money is being drained out. And obviously the banks also realized this, so we got into multi-factor authentication.
Yep.
So now you can't just log in and transfer money, you also need to use the code that's coming on your phone.
Yep.
Or your email, for example. Now with AI, do you have any tips or tricks for people to really, look at these things?
I think there are some of these things, and I'm glad you brought up the Web3 part because I was in DC last week, and over dinner, I was hearing, and this person actually works for the State Department, that now there are good policies coming out that any piece of art needs to also have identification on where it was created, right? Whether it's genuine, artificially created, some other person created it using some of the models, so that you know what you're getting into. And it's the same thing that we've seen this picture before. You go to Times Square in New York, you know you can buy a $20 Rolex,
Yes.
right? And we know where to go in Delhi to buy similarly all the
Ray-Bans.
brand names.
Yes.
You know where to go in Bombay to buy all the brand names. So we know what to look for,
Yeah.
right? And that will be the same thing with AI. There is nothing overly dramatic that's coming out, and the deep fakes are genuinely an issue. Like if I got a call from President Obama, maybe I will send the $20 because he's calling. But those things will happen. Main thing is be aware that things are changing. What I would say is at this point, I've heard and read so many articles about what it can go wrong. I'm actually tired of that.
Right.
I would rather now start hearing about solutions on how to counteract this and where things are going. How can people be better educated and informed? And more importantly, how to ride the AI wave rather than just being victim to it in 1, 2, 3 years.
So to that point, one of the things, and I want to start talking about the advancements that
Yeah.
we are, we can look at in the future. But the one message that I want to give out to the audience is verify information that you're getting.
Yeah.
The other day, my husband, he suddenly, he told me, Sonia, look at this, right? He showed me his phone, and on phone there was a WhatsApp status being shared by someone in the family, and this someone in the family actually from India, and they are in the medical field. They are a doctor themselves. They had put up a WhatsApp status message, which seemed like it was a screenshot taken from an online publication that said that coronavirus vaccines increases the risk of heart disease by 13,000%. And he was perplexed, right? He was like, look at it, right? 13,000%. And I told him, this doesn't look right. First of all, what was that about publication, right? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I said, go and do a quick Google search because news like this would be on page one. It was nowhere, right? So not only had somebody just faked it and created it, which is so easy, you can go and do it with Canva's online templates, right? Like we have seen so many people just for fun put up their face on Times Magazine. They're not in Times Magazine, obviously, right? Times Magazine
Yep.
Person of the Year, just
Yep.
one issue coming out. It's just as easy. But it is important for you to go and verify whether that information that you're getting, and especially as we get to the era of new presidential elections coming out, I feel like this is going to be very important. You will see a lot of fake clips being sent out, like they're coming from Trump, they're coming from Biden, it is going to be extremely important to verify and, like you said, really authenticate, not just in terms of art where it is coming from, but really even in terms of all of these clips being sent out. I feel like the media metadata has to be enriched and enhanced so the general audience can figure out whether it is coming from the right sources.
Exactly.
So I'm so glad that you brought it up. But guys, again, make sure you are staying alert. Don't be afraid, but be alert and just be cautious and have common sense, as Kamal would put it. So now, the next 15 minutes of the show, let's talk about what is exciting in the world of AI. What advancements, what things in life can we see changing for the good with AI becoming a part of our everyday life?
Yes, that's the more interesting thing to talk about. So, as you had put this right, threat or opportunity, massive opportunity. I would even call it opportunity of a lifetime.
Opportunities of a lifetime. And guys, we are going to be in the pilot seat, right? We have the front row seats for this because people in the past did not see these advancements. People in the future would already have this in place. We are going to be the drivers and we are going to have the front row seats for driving this massive opportunity into the future. A
Exactly.
massive opportunity, okay, right? Today's show, we were talking about AI, whether it's a threat or an opportunity. And from our guest, we are going to talk about the perspective of massive opportunity.
Yep.
So keep going. Next 5 years, really excited to hear about your thoughts.
I think everything is going to change.
Okay.
It will have a profound effect. It'll be very broad. All our jobs are going to change.
Yes.
What you do, what I do, what everybody does is going to change. And but it's really glass if three is three quarters full. The reason is this, that with each of these shifts, what I see is more good has come out of it. And even simple things like what Amazon did with delivery,
Yeah.
that thing just changed a lot. Like we didn't need to have things show up in 2 days, but they did. And then
Or
it was
even
good.
same day. Amazon now has like overnight delivery. You forgot something you needed at 7 a.m. in the morning. You now have overnight deliveries.
Overnight delivery. And then during COVID, what happened with all the delivery services, right? Instacart and DoorDash
They
and
were
Uber
hot
Eats.
cakes on a shelf.
So each of these things are going to become even more dramatic. Second part is it's worth actually going through each industry and each role to actually see what would be done differently. I think a lot of our menial stuff that we don't enjoy doing, but we have to do, a lot of that will get automated.
Which is good, right? Because it allows us to focus more on human interactions
Exactly.
versus just interacting with machines the entire
Yep.
day doing these menial jobs.
And the second thing that will happen is, and we were discussing this thing a couple of weeks back also, if you just take about autonomous driving, now we can again debate the pros and cons and all that stuff, but it's coming. And the only thing that's holding it up is to make sure there are enough miles logged, billions of miles that are being logged, so that insurance doesn't go up if you own an autonomous driven car, right? So that's the context. Now, when my parents are old, my mom just passed away, my dad is 94. I know that my dad used to drive all the time. Every day he would go and do something. But once he had to stop driving, and I think it was late 70s or so, his quality of life changed.
Yes.
And once I became aware of these autonomous driven cars, I said it would have been fantastic if he could actually call the car, get in there, still go to the grocery store, do a little bit of stuff. His routine would have continued and he would have had a healthier thing. And the same thing
Yes.
applies to people with disabilities and other stuff. Transportation is a big thing. Now, second part is if you look at aeroplanes, they are actually pretty much on automatic pilot.
They are.
Right? The takeoff, landing, everything is already automated.
To be honest, it is a lot of the flights you will be fine even if the two pilots were not there.
Yeah. And the reason why they're there is because the cost of a pilot is about 4 to 5% of the cost of a flight. So having the person there to make sure that everybody feels comfortable sitting in the back while computers fly the plane is okay.
That is actually an interesting thing, right? Like imagine, guys, if you're boarding your next flight and they say, hey, this is your pilot speaking and I am just the flight's computer. you don't actually have a pilot, I think a lot of people will, want to get off that flight.
Exactly, right. And if the thing is offer is that hey, you can take this flight which is flown by a computer and you'll pay $20 less, or you can go with this one with a pilot in there, then no, I'll pay the 20
I'll
bucks.
pay the $20. Yes, we are actually giving bad ideas to the airline industries on this show because
No, they already know about it, right?
we know about
And
it. Yes.
now take a look at trucks. The cost of a truck driver in a truck is actually 35-40%.
Yeah.
And there aren't enough truck drivers.
There aren't enough trucks. It is a laborious job. A
It
lot of the
is.
truck drivers, they also face a lot of health issues because of the
Exactly.
long hours that they
Yeah.
have to sit and drive.
And all this stuff that we are driving, all this consumerism that we want this also and that also in 2 days and overnight, that is actually exacerbating the need for more people driving trucks.
Yes.
So there you will see the autonomous driving coming even faster.
Yeah.
Because the problem is not getting solved.
So in the autonomous vehicle industry, some countries are making more progress than others because of the way everything has been structured. In US, it is easier. Like people also tend to follow rules a little easier. I think with countries like India, it might be a little bit of a challenge because the roadways are not that well marked. We have beautiful infrastructure being built out now. With autonomous vehicles, there has also been some talks around even creating like dedicated lanes
Yeah.
on the freeway
Yep.
that are just meant for autonomous, not vehicles, but autonomous trucks to
Yep.
be driven on them. So I feel like some changes in the basic infrastructure would actually make things, much better. Uh, Autonomous vehicles, right? It's also one of those top 10 things that Bill Gates has said people should watch out for because that could completely change the way we do a big portion of our life. Like a lot of us spend a lot of time in cars.
Yeah.
And I enjoy driving, but not when I'm stuck in traffic on
Yep.
the Interstate 5 and there is no exit for the next 20 miles. And I used to drive a lot to LA. So I would always tell my husband. So my husband, he works for NVIDIA and he actually leads the in-car testing for autonomous vehicles at NVIDIA. So I always keep pestering him, telling him when are autonomous vehicles going to hit the market? Because as much as I enjoy the thrill of the road, if I am driving for 5 to 6 hours, I would rather be doing something more productive than just sitting behind the wheel.
Yep.
Right. So autonomous vehicles, I think that's going to be a game changer. Now, what else? Which other areas do you see really seeing like a complete disruption?
I think what I'm seeing across the board, like there's a lot of talk with GPT-3, 4 being applied to content creation, to marketing use cases, which is fantastic. But I think what it'll do is raise the bar of individuals' creativity. So it's
Yes.
like we don't need individuals. We do, but you need to now be even more original, more authentic, because the bare minimum can be done by somebody else.
That's an excellent point. So generally on the show, we also have another expert, Asif Kamar. He comes here and he teaches others AI. Also, he has created AI platform for Cornerstone in the past. He led their AI development. So he's deeply rooted into education and AI. And this is one of the things that we were talking about. That even with Transformers can only create from things that they have access to,
Yep.
right? So the data that it has. But if you try to ask it to come up with a new concept, it's going to struggle there.
Yep.
Like we have seen artists like Andy Warhol, right? Which is still a big name. When Andy Warhol came up with those pop color things, you can't, and it became a global phenomenon to the point that even today, people go to ChatGPT and put prompts like in the style of Andy Warhol. So those things, Transformers guys are not able to do it. And from a lot of experts I've chatted with, they think that Transformers won't be able to do that for quite some time. Coming up with that originality, the creativity. And a lot of the times when I talk to engineers, right, and I talk to creative artists, they complain that they spend so much time working on menial tasks that they are not able to bring their originality and
Yep.
their creativity to the forefront. So, with AI taking over the routine, people get to be more creative.
Absolutely. Now, you touched upon one of the key things, and that's essentially what Ikigai is also focused on. That in businesses, most of the use cases are not about content per se, they are more about numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's about forecasting, it's about planning, it's about labor planning, resource planning, all that. So that's where we think we can make a tremendous difference, because a lot of the research that our guys have done is around large graph models, around numbers. So not to get too complex, but if you're launching a new product, you don't have enough data to figure out how well will it do.
Right.
These days, we are talking a lot about China plus one strategy in supply chain. Whoever had manufacturing facilities in China now needs to have an alternate strategy.
Especially after COVID disruption, many people have started doing that, right? They're like, okay, our supply chain was disrupted,
Yep.
and a lot of businesses were impacted. So they're looking at Vietnam, Mexico, a lot of near shore
Exactly.
supplies too. Yes, China plus one. I didn't know it had a name.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's a good learning experience. Yeah, China plus one. Makes sense.
India is going to benefit a lot because manufacturing is finally going into India.
Yes, I just want our export laws to, and the export costs to go lower, because right now we are not well poised for that. But we have a great movement with Make in India.
Yep.
Even me, which has flooded the Indian market with low cost but great looking devices, right? And great working devices too. In fact, the phone that I am recording this on, right, that's also a Me phone. And it works just as better as my Samsung phone.
Yep.
So, with what you're saying, right, like the manufacturing, so China plus one, how does AI help there?
So now what's happening is, whether it's Mexico, Vietnam, India, the supply chain in China was optimized over 20, 30 years.
Yes.
When you get into a new place for your manufacturing, things will stay up in the air and unpredictable. So when you don't have enough of a track record and data, how do you then do the forecasting so that you are still running a reliable business?
Predictive modeling becomes that much more harder, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't have the data to look at the trends and predict.
Exactly.
So then how does Ikigai solve this problem?
So we're very good in working with large data sets, but they can be sparse. And most of the enterprise, it's tabular data. It's not unstructured data like text and video, etc. So we are able to, with for any data set, understand the relationship between each of the data points. That allows us to fairly accurately fill in the blanks. And that allows us to then generate the extra data that is needed to do the forecasting. So we are sort of generative AI, but it's really generative AI for tabular data.
Generative AI for tabular data.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I want to ask you is, when you talk about filling in the blanks, are you able to leverage similar data sets like that are publicly available, right? Just
Yeah.
to help fill in the blank.
Exactly. And that's always the power of what else can you learn from the outside, which is all common ground, but so difficult to leverage.
Because a lot of the outside data is not structured, as we know.
Yeah.
Right? There is a lot of unstructured data. And so Ikigai is able to make sense of that as well as the structured data.
Exactly. Then the other key part is that, just like we were earlier talking about GPT, etc., GPT-3, GPT-4, these were all pre-trained on internet scale data. Most enterprises don't have that much data. So our stuff can be trained on demand with the enterprise data. So the ability to do that and being able to work with sparse and incomplete data sets allows us to actually provide that predictive analytics, and also the planning part. That, okay, if I'm putting something in Mexico, what products should I be manufacturing out of Mexico?
Yes.
How is the mix of my business now? Right. And then the shipping cost is different, but then what are the other latencies that come in?
What are the other grants you could probably get? Like yesterday, we went out to watch The Flash, and at the end of the credits, there were at least 10 grants listed from different countries' governments, right? From New Zealand to Canada to even Mexico and stuff. And I was like, wow, and obviously DC and Marvel, when you think of those names, you don't think like they'll be leveraging the grants. But hey, everybody loves free money. If you're getting access to these grants, why not? I also feel like, so is Ikigai able to bring in insights from things like that too, or it's mostly around the manufacturing processes and what you can do?
Actually, a variety of things. We are being used right now for financial transaction compliance to actually detect patterns across different data sets. So things that are typically much harder for human beings to do it manually, we are being able to do it. And the other piece that we did very thoughtfully and differently was, we do want the expert in the loop, the human involvement in the process. We'll do all the grunt work to come up with the predictions and options, but then it's good to have an expert make a final call. Because, by the way, that is what's coming in as regulations.
Yeah.
That one, yes, it's even on the hiring side and HR side, there's a New York law that yes, if you're going to use an AI tool to select or make shortlist a candidate,
And they are using it every day for
yeah,
the past 10 years
exactly.
plus now.
But also then give others who don't want to go through that AI powered process, give them a manual process. So if you're able to keep the expert in the loop, it does two things. You don't have to make a complete faith and keep having this theoretical argument on are you giving away the jobs to AI, because the expert is still there. And the second part is, yes, the job is different than what it was earlier. So instead of having to deal with fire drills around 10% of the transactions, it may come down to 1 or 2% because the rest is now being addressed with data
Right.
and insight. So across these, they are, and the other one that's actually coming on the manufacturing side big time is this whole push around ESG, how to use environmentally friendly materials,
That's right. Yes.
right? So all this stuff that's around us, slowly all of those components and suppliers are going to be very different. So again, something that was optimized, it will be up in the air on how to actually make products that are better for the earth, that consume less energy and all that, and more efficient, more friendly. That basically means you have to rethink all of it.
So, guys, a lot of you might know I used to work for Deloitte, right? And I feel like generally when companies started, if they wanted access to this kind of knowledge, this kind of insights, and create a plan, that is where you would hire the top guns, as we would call it, right? So you'll hire McKinsey, Bain, BCG, the top three, or you'd get like Deloitte, or you'll get KPMG to come and do that consultation work for you. And it is not cheap. But here it
And
seems
nothing
like
actually gets done.
yes, that's another thing. I don't want to actually badmouth,
The
any of the
sponsors?
companies. No, not the sponsors, but any companies you work with, because obviously there
Yeah.
are a lot of people who do good
Yep.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But that being said, it's always a little subjective, right? Because you might be expecting a trip to the moon, but then you find it hard to even get a one-way flight ticket to the neighboring country. Sometimes it just comes down to that. But that being said, it seems like Ikigai is actually democratizing access to this knowledge. So, yes, you will need an expert, but at the same time, a lot of that grunt work, right, you can be delegated to the systems being built at Ikigai. That expertise can be then leveraged by the team, signed off by an expert. And I feel like that would dramatically reduce costs.
Big
And
time.
whenever we see a reduction in these administrative costs, they basically add to the bottom line of profits. And I feel that, if the profits are better, it also translates into everyone at the company being paid off better because they are just making more profit.
That's exactly right. And also, what we are betting on is in a couple of quarters, we will get past the current economic slump.
Yes.
So while right now everybody's being conservative to conserve cash, next year it'll be back to shareholder value. What does their growth look like? Have you made the right investments? So then there'll be a scramble to quickly start ramping up again. So the latency that was there, that you could do your planning over a couple of years, will now come down to
Do it in a
quarterly.
quarter, yeah, a couple of quarters.
Yeah. And what everybody's talking about for businesses is, and what COVID and then the economics, like last 2, 3 years have been very difficult to plan and execute and take care of everything. So that
Nobody
be
had planned for COVID, right? Like
yep,
we had Sequoia Capital call it a black swan event because nobody knew what to do. Without the $3 trillion economic injection, we would have been looking at a very dire situation, to be
yep.
honest. Now, that with that, I would love for us to come to the conclusion of the show, right? It unfortunately we have to conclude. Absolutely loved our conversation here, but before we conclude the show, I would love for you to give a message, right, to all the listeners based off of all our discussions that we have had here. What is that one lasting message you want to leave our audiences with? I'm going to again, repeat one of the quotes that you had, like when in doubt, let it go. I think that is great advice, right? To write down on your whiteboard somewhere or a sticky note and keep in front of you. But besides that, what is the last parting message you would love to give to our listeners of the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi?
I think the main thing that I'm excited about is when something like this big is happening in front of you, how can we be riding this wave and capitalizing on it? What I really encourage all the businesses and all of us who are in a position to have a broader impact than just taking care of ourselves is to actually think about how can we take the rest of the workforce with us. AI will change a lot of jobs. Some of us are privileged enough that we'll roll with it and actually will be fine. But there are others who won't be. So it's our job to help others, take them with us. And this is not just here, it's in India. And I'll give you some specific things. So far, and that was a discussion a couple of weeks ago, I can't think of that many women billionaires despite all these massive technology improvements. If
Yes.
AI leads to more women billionaires, then we know we are doing a good job because the participation has to be a lot broader in the all the wealth that will be created because of AI.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons why I'm also in Web3, because Web3 decentralizes
Yep,
opportunities, and access to information and opportunity is such a missed opportunity
yep,
in our generation that we see, because
yep,
people who have the capital, who are in the right place at the right time, as we call it, very rarely it is a matter of luck. A lot of the times being in the right place at the right time comes down to privilege,
yep.
right? Because you are privileged and you can be there. What about those who don't have that privilege,
Yep.
right? How do you uplift them? I think with AI, again, taking care of the menial tasks, this is such a warm thought to leave our listeners with. If your jobs are becoming redundant, right? Obviously, you might be in a position where you can be okay with not even going to work every day, but you would derive immense satisfaction from empowering others, uplifting them. And if your job role is also changing, I feel like a lot of job roles would probably change to a point, just like what you said with the New York thing, right? To focus and improve human interactions.
100%. And I think that should be the measure of how well we are doing as society. So, what I would suggest is let's dial down the choo choo about AI, but really figure out how we actually help ourselves and others. And I think about impact.
Think about closing in on the gap, because all this time the chasm has been widened.
Exactly.
How do we just close it?
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever be in a future where all of us are equal, because we are not the same. But at the same time, being being able to create an equitable platform is important, right?
Opportunities. Got to give more opportunities. And the other part is fairness will only result in the same thing because it is skewed towards men in the workforce. So we need to over rotate to make sure we get more of the underrepresented parts of our workforce involved.
Yes.
And whatever training they need, whatever coaching, teaching they need, we should give it. That's where the investment needs to go in.
And I'm very proud to see Ikigai also doing that, right? Because by providing free access to individuals to education, at this point, it is more a matter of making people more aware that opportunities like this exist.
Yep.
So, again, guys, the last message from my side would be for the learners, right, and the curious minds on the show to go and take a look at academy.ikigai.io. There, you can find access to a lot of these course materials for individuals. It's free to enroll in this, and at least start acquainting yourself with AI, what is happening. And it also talks about no code building in AI with Ikigai. So that's also something for you to explore.
And as PM Modi said, AI is America and India.
AI is America and India. Oh my god, I didn't know that he said. I know a lot of people have been talking about his recent visit to White House. Well, guys, again, it was lovely hosting Kamal here at the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi 15:50 a.m. We will see you next week on Monday, and this time we'll be talking more about Web3. With that, Kamal, thank you for coming to the show, and thanks to all of our wonderful audiences listening in to the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi 15:50 a.m. This is your show host RJ Sonia signing off.